is the time now, while many of us worry about the headlines that there could be a throwback to the 70s, even a 3-day week. One person is supremely confident this will not happen. I speak of Conservative MP, and importantly, in the context of this conversation, Business Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng, who joins me now. It's wonderful to see your confidence, Secretary of State, but when you consider that the energy relies on everything from Vladimir Putin to the wind blowing, how can you be so confident? Good morning.
Lots of reasons, Nick. Good to see you again.
And you, sir.
But one of the things that gives me confidence is the fact that we've got a very wide range of gas and supply of electricity. So if you look at the gas market, 50%, people don't know this, but 50% of the gas, the natural gas that we use, is sourced here in the UK. And then 30% comes from Norway. I was lucky enough, privileged enough to speak to the Norwegian minister yesterday. And she said to me,
he's only your counterpart, Kwasi. I mean, privileged. You make him sound like the Pope. I mean, it's only you ringing your Norwegian counterpart, respectfully.
But you could appreciate I had to do that.
I doubt if in Oslo he's saying, I had the privilege of speaking to the great Kwasi Kwarteng yesterday. But anyway, do go on, Secretary.
Well, anyway, I mean, the reason why I had this conversation, whether it's privileged or not, is because I wanted to make sure that we had a security of supply from Norway. She actually said that it was they're going to increase capacity next week, so we'll be able to get a secure supply from there. And so, putting all of these things together, I think that we do have a pretty secure supply, and that's why I'm as confident as you've described this morning.
You're not crisis. What crisis? You're not a modern-day Jim Callaghan, Mr. Kwarteng.
Well, he was flying from I can't remember which Caribbean island it was. I spent the weekend speaking to energy suppliers, speaking to the regulator, Ofgem. I also spoke to people in business. So I've been very much focused on the job, and the conversations I had have given me confidence that we're going to get through this.
How many companies do you think will go to the wall, Secretary of State?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. It's important that people know that this is my third winter as either Energy Minister or Secretary of State. And generally, over the last 3 or 4 years, we've had 5 to 8 companies, what I call exit the market. For whatever reason, they've come into the market and then they've left the market. Some of them have been badly run. Some of them have had liquidity difficulties. So this is something that happens a lot. You're quite right this year that the number will probably exceed the 5 to 8, the normal 5 to 8 companies that exit. So we have to just anticipate more failures given the high wholesale price. That's the price that they pay, the energy companies pay for the gas. But we've got mechanisms in place. That's what I've been talking about this weekend, and that's what I was talking about particularly yesterday with a number of suppliers. And I'll continue those conversations sometime today with smaller suppliers, in fact, to get a feel for where they are.
When companies fold, normally, sadly, that means job losses. Are we looking at a lot of job losses here?
Well, a lot of these companies are very small companies, and it's always a sad thing when companies do have to exit the market or leave or fail. But what I'm very clear about, Nick, is that I don't want taxpayers' money to be propping up badly run companies. I don't think that makes any sense. We can't reward failure. And we have a normal process. It's called the supplier of last resort. It's called SOLAR. And that kicks in when, if you're a customer of a small business that fails, a small energy supplier that fails, you can then move on to another company, which can then supply you with the power that you need. So it's all of these things are already there. The question this year is at what scale? What is the actual outcome going to be?
Well, of course, you'll be aware, Secretary of State, there'll be massive pressure on the wallet and purses of many. Households already facing a rise of around 13% in the average, around £139 this October. Can I put it to you that this is not the time to take away the temporary uplift in universal credit? That must surely be rethought for the poorer households, Secretary of State.
Well, you will know. I mean, you try and get me to stray on turf that frankly isn't mine. You will know that that's a subject for the Chancellor. It's a subject for a budget. We're going into a budget, I think, at the end of next month, and I'm sure there'll be more clarity on that then. I fully appreciate that it's going to be a difficult time. We've got very high prices, particularly in energy, And my job is to try and protect consumers as best I can from those high prices. And that's why I've said that we're going to keep the energy price cap. Now, I read in the papers today that some of the energy companies want me to remove the price cap and essentially allow them to charge what price they want. And I don't think that's acceptable. So we're going to keep the energy price cap. And we're going to protect the most vulnerable customers.
Were your colleague to look at possibly extending what was meant to be the temporary uplift for another few months, would you support it?
I'm always in conversation with the Chancellor. I spoke to him yesterday about energy prices, and we work very closely together. I'm not going to say one way or the other on this programme what the conversations I'm having with him are.
All right. You mentioned the newspapers. A couple of them are of the opinion that in a way we've created part of this problem. Obviously, it's no one's fault that the wind doesn't blow, because we've gone a little bit too fast into trying to reduce CO2 emissions, and we're paying the price by going green a little too fast, is what a couple of commentators say. Your comment, Secretary of State?
I don't agree with that. I mean, I think if you look at our success in renewables, it's a world-leading industry. Offshore wind is with the capital, the global capital, if you like, of offshore wind. 30% of the capacity in the world.
But if the wind doesn't blow, doesn't that underscore my point? If the wind doesn't blow, Secretary of State, we find ourselves in a bit of a hole.
But look at where we've come from. I mean, just 10 years ago, 40% of our electricity was coming from coal. You're not suggesting that we burn coal to get electricity. I mean, that's something which, for the past, you and I remember those days. But yeah. I think it's great that we're moving away from fossil fuels and moving away from burning coal.
One other matter, the Prime Minister, as you'll be aware, of course, is in the United States. He had a meeting with Jeff Bezos yesterday, and the readout says the Prime Minister raised the issue of taxation, hoped progress could be made in implementing the G7 agreement on tax. Incredibly rich companies, corporations or individuals must pay their fair share, mustn't they, Business Secretary?
I think they must. And also because what's happened, as you know, is that online shopping has really taken off over the last 20 years. And I think there is a case for saying that our tax system hasn't really kept up with that. I mean, as a constituency MP, I see this all the time. You see retail shops on the high street really being under pressure, whereas online retail seems to be exempt almost from taxation. And we've got to look at this, and the Prime Minister is absolutely right. And I'm delighted that he actually presented the case and discussed this with Jeff Bezos yesterday.
Who should be paying more tax?
I think that we need to look at how we essentially have a level playing field between online retail and traditional high street, and that's something that's an ongoing discussion within the government.
Last couple of questions. Should we be concerned about shortages of meat products and some other products in our stores, Secretary of State?
No, we shouldn't be. We're focusing very much on getting carbon dioxide production up and running. I spoke to the CEO of CFF, which produces most of the carbon dioxide in the UK. I spoke to him twice over the last 2 days. And we're all very focused on making sure that we can get that.
So when will the situation abate then? Later this week?
I hope in the next week that we'll have something concrete on that.
Okay. And lastly, a story in one of the newspapers today. More and more staff are suggesting that they will demand that they work from home. What percentage of staff in your department are actually in their offices, Secretary of State?
Well, we've moved to a world where we essentially have a three-day working from the office week. I'm not content really to see less than 3 days, and the majority of people, I don't have the exact figure today, but the majority of people are coming back, and hopefully by the end, in a couple of weeks, we'll have the vast majority at least coming in 3 days a week and working from home possibly 2 days a week.
So that will be the future, will it, do you think, in your department?
Well,
the so-called hybrid of 3 and 2?
I think there's going to be a hybrid, but I've said repeatedly that I think that this is a matter for individual companies. I think employers and employees.
But you're happy with the 3 and 2? I mean, you're the boss, effectively, your company, as it were. You're happy with the 3 and a 2?
We'll see how that works. I think it can work. People did work very effectively over the COVID period. We got lots of things done. We spent supported the economy, I should say, to the tune of billions.
Yeah.
And we managed to do that, Nick, when lots of people were working from home. So I'm not one of these people who necessarily thinks that people who are working from home aren't being productive.
I hear you, but if I'm running a company and I'm desperate to get mine in for 4 and 1 or even 5 days a week, and the business department is settled for 3 and 2, it's not a great look, is it, Secretary of State?
Well, look, there are different companies that do different things. I mean, if you're running an engineering company, I speak to Sir James Dyson, I'm a great admirer of his. If you're doing models, designing models, it's very difficult to do that at home, particularly if the models you're making have to fit into other people's models. You have to come to work. But if you're running a small publishing business and you've got access to software, that's something that you might be able to do more readily from home. So it's not a one-size-fits-all package, if you like. Different businesses will have different needs.
All right. It's been a privilege speaking with you, Kwasi Kwarteng. Thank you for appearing here.
You're going to use that against me, aren't you?
It's an interesting one. I just look forward to you speaking with the Dalai Lama. God knows how that'll go down.
It's not every day, Nick, that I get to speak to Norwegian energy ministers.
And I never have, so you've got, as ever, you're ahead of me. Kwasi Kwarteng, thanks so much for appearing here on LBC, where the time is 2 minutes after 8. Let's give you the news next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.